Hey, it's Greg Brown, the storyteller, poet laureate of aviation. Grab your logbook, because it's time for another flying carpet cockpit adventure. I'm an aviation author, adventure columnist, photographer, and former National Flight Instructor of the Year. The Flying Carpet is a 4-place single-engine light airplane. In it, my wife Jean and I have long traveled the North American continent, searching behind clouds for the real America. Learn more at my website, gregbrownflyingcarpet.com, where you can also see photos from most episodes. This year marks the centennial of legendary highway U.S. Route 66, affectionately known as America's Mother Road. Officially established on November 11, 1926, it meanders nearly 2,500 miles from Chicago, Illinois, through Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, to Santa Monica, California. While Route 66 was decommissioned in 1985 as an official U.S. highway, countless travelers continue to trace the iconic route, visiting its many historic, scenic, and often quirky landmarks and savoring stretches of the original roadway. Why the attraction? Over the decades, Route 66 has been widely romanticized in popular culture, perhaps most notably by John Steinbeck's 1939 novel, The Grapes of Wrath, which originated the highway's nickname, the Mother Road. Then by Bobby Troupe's 1946 song, Get Your Kicks on Route 66, and the popular 1960s Route 66 television series, starring Martin Milner and George Maharis. Well, Jean and I have long lived in Arizona, at a prominent stop on the historic highway. We daily drive portions of old Route 66, the main drag through our town, among local historic and wacky Route 66 landmarks. Over our years in Arizona, we've savored countless Route 66 events and driven much of Route 66 through the Southwest and parts of the Midwest, including portions of the original roadway. So like other Mother Road residents, Route 66 runs through our blood. Not surprisingly, most of our recent flying carpet adventures have originated from this area, and even before then we experienced many Route 66 locations upon overflying or landing there. So I decided to record this episode to celebrate the Mother Road Centennial. It wasn't easy choosing between our dozens of Route 66 flying adventures, but this story floated to the top. Look forward to more in the future. So climb into the flying carpet, buckle up your seatbelts, and prepare to launch over the Mother Road on today's episode, Get Your Kicks Flying Route 66. Clear prop. Hey Dan, check out that 39 Chevy. It's just like the one I owned in high school and college, even the same color. My friend and I were ogling classic cars amid crowds of people on old Route 66 in downtown Seligman, Arizona, when I spotted the old Chevy isolated in a small parking lot. Dan drives a tricked-out Camaro, so I doubt he appreciated the old car's beauty as I did. Then again, my view was burnished by memories. As we crossed the road to see it, I remembered my dad encouraging me to buy the low-mileage antique he'd spotted on a street corner, and thought of all I'd learned rebuilding the engine and updating the brakes. Among life's rich lessons after getting the old car running was when girls at the local Dog and Suds drive-in bypassed all the muscle cars to ride in my Emerald Chevy. It only did 55 miles an hour. But like puppies and babies, it exuded character, so the girls loved it. Best of all, the narrow front seat ensured that such passengers rode deliciously close by. Regular listeners know my passion for that old car, and will remember stories of me driving it with two long-haired friends on a post-high school road trip from Chicago, through Canada to Maine, down the East Coast, and back. As Dan and I approached the car, however, something didn't seem quite right. In hazy memories, my old Chevy loomed much larger. Certainly I didn't recall bending down to look inside as we did with this one. Yet surely this was the real thing, with its curvaceous proportions, detailed grille, and sparkling chrome. "What the heck?" I said, figuring my mind was playing tricks. After all, I last saw my car decades ago. Lacking 39 Chevy expertise, Dan just shrugged. We were soon enticed down the street by a burnt orange pickup sporting yellow flames and a matching 1950s travel trailer. "How do you find so many fun places to fly?" asked Dan as we walked. Together we've attended half a dozen memorable events in Arizona and New Mexico. The truth is, you don't know it's good till you get there. Like most aviators, I suffer my share of beautiful flying days with nowhere to go. But from the beginning, I've used my piloting skills to build flights of fancy around wherever curiosity might lead me. Way back as a University of Illinois architecture student, I was intrigued to learn that 150 miles away, Columbus, Indiana hosts an unparalleled collection of fanciful buildings designed by the great names of modern architecture. With enthusiastic classmates sharing expenses, we flew there for a memorable day of sightseeing. Another time, I read of prehistoric bird-shaped Indian mounds near the Mississippi River. I tracked down the owner of a nearby grass strip and flew in with my then-girlfriend Jean for a visit. Circling the mounds from the air afterward was a highlight of our day. Among my favorite flying destinations have always been the nation's wacky and wonderful small-town festivals. Here in Arizona, we've flown to Wilcox for the Rex Allen Festival. The singing movie cowboy was way before my time, but it made for a fun family day and the chance to learn about him. My family has repeatedly enjoyed Native American festivals along Route 66, including the Navajo Nation Fair in Window Rock and Gallup, New Mexico's Intertribal Indian Ceremonial. Those two are terrific, and you shouldn't miss them if you get the opportunity to go to either one. Along with native parades and dancing, they offer plenty of Navajo tacos to savor, plus beautiful native jewelry at a fraction of what you'd pay elsewhere. Anyway, today I had invited my pilot buddy, Dan Sobczak, to check out the Route 66 Fun Run, an annual Good Time Weekend Classic car tour that follows the longest remaining uninterrupted stretch of the historic highway across northern Arizona. We'd fly that day from Falcon Field near Phoenix. "I have no idea how good this will be," I cautioned Dan upon making the offer. "Count me in," replied Dan. "Flying anywhere will be more fun than trimming trees," which is what I'd planned for the day. We decided to intercept the fun run Saturday morning at Seligman, Arizona, rather than join the bigger party when the cars reached Kingman that afternoon. Flying weather would be better in the morning when the Seligman visit took place, and we could walk into town from the airport, whereas Kingman would require a taxi. Saturday morning dawned cool and clear. Escaping the Phoenix air traffic hornet's nest via the Bradshaw Mountains, Prescott, and the Chino Valley, we skimmed over Arizona's higher, cooler northern plateau. Hues of hand-rubbed lacquer sparkled from Route 66 below as we entered the traffic pattern over tiny Seligman. Unlike my previous visits to often empty Seligman Airport, this time airplanes occupied every tie-down and interstitial space. Fortunately, a departing Cessna Skywagon opened a gap between taxiway lights where we nestled the flying carpet. Guided by a pedestrian map posted at the airport, Dan and I walked 2 blocks downtown to Old Route 66. There, rows of collectible cars clogged the historic thoroughfare for the entire length of town. This is no concours d'elegance, but an open-entry event where owners flaunt their treasures regardless of how exotic or mundane they might appear to others. Alongside lovingly restored Corvettes, Mustangs, and fire-breathing pickup trucks was a candy apple rainbow of chopped and channeled 49 Mercury sedans. I've never seen so many in one place. And of course, that memorable Emerald 1939 Chevy. Other gems included an all-original 26 Ford, a 1930s cab-over-engine truck hauling an 8-wheeled Jeep, and a VW Beetle surgically slimmed to the width of its driver. Such magical backyard creatures you'd never encounter at any white glove auto exhibit. As the cars accelerated slowly along Old 66 toward Kingman, Dan and I thrilled to the bright colors, broad smiles, and revving engines associated with each passing vehicle. We had just reversed course towards Lilo's Cafe for lunch when I again spotted the 39 Chevy. This time, however, the car appeared in context with other vehicles around it. What's more, a very tall man rested his foot on the running board and his elbow on the roof. Now it was conclusive. The old Chevy was most certainly not the right size. "This yours?" I asked the man. "Yes," he answered, extending his hand. "I'm Ernie Adams, Mr. Dwarf Car. My friend Darren and I built it from scratch." "You built this car yourself? It's amazing." "Yeah, Darren and I built them from scratch. You should see our Dwarf 42 Ford convertible. That one's our best." He retrieved photos but was soon motioned into the procession. "Gotta go," said Ernie. To everyone's amusement, the big man compressed impossibly into the tiny car and buzzed away in a cloud of oily smoke. Flying home that afternoon, Dan and I chuckled about the dwarf Chevy and its well-deserved place in the homespun heritage of small-town celebrations. I described to Dan the lavender municipal vehicles in the Chicago suburb where I grew up, so painted in homage to the local Lilac Festival. Picture purple Plymouth Valiant municipal cars with diagonal tail fins, Dan. Even the garbage trucks were lavender in our town. Then I remembered the Gibson City, Illinois Oktoberfest that Gene and I once attended in college, where revelers guzzled draft beer from buckets. For your information, that was not a festival we flew to or home from. Every small community seemingly must have its festival, no matter how far-fetched the justification. I remember driving my University of Wisconsin pal Fred home through the little central Wisconsin town of Abbotsford many years ago. "Wisconsin's first city," boasted the welcoming festival banner. Strange, I observed to my friend at the time, that the state's first community should be founded in such a remote place, so far from any waterway or coastline. "That's not what they're celebrating," replied Fred with a chuckle. "You see, there's this alphabetical book called the Directory of Wisconsin Cities and Towns." Anyway, back to the immediate story. Over Prescott on the way home, Dan and I shifted our attention from cars and festivals to a striking cloud formation layered like a Dagwood sandwich. The two of us thought we were experiencing atmospheric history, but meteorologist friends later identified it from my photos as an unusual variant of the common alto-cumulus lenticular cloud familiar to mountain pilots. How embarrassing. Then again, I also thought I knew a 39 Chevy when I saw one. I'd largely forgotten that 2005 Route 66 adventure, When last summer I received the following text from an old Indiana friend, Gene Schildmeyer, retired automotive engineer and award-winning auto restorer. "Hi, Greg," he wrote. "Rita and I flew into Phoenix this week, and today we went to a place called the Dwarf Car Museum. I'm amazed by Ernie Adams' craftsmanship." He attached a snap of the picture illustrating this podcast of Ernie Adams with his Dwarf 39 Chevy, which originally appeared in my AOPA Flight Training magazine column at the time. "I was amazed to see your name in Ernie's book," wrote my friend. Following were additional snapshots he had taken of various dwarf cars at the museum. Now, at that point, 20 years had passed since I met Ernie Adams, and I had no idea that such a book or such a museum existed. Pleased to hear that Ernie was alive and in good health, I phoned and offered to send a metal print of my column photo for his museum, which he graciously accepted. "Ernie, how do you accomplish such precision in scaling down these curvaceous autos?" I asked. Ernie explained that he forms the sheet metal by hand, visually referencing only oblique views of side, front, and back of the car. Incredible. More recently, another friend, professional auto restorer David Muir, told me that Ernie Adams is well known in restoration circles, his dwarf cars often appearing in automotive magazines. The Dwarf Car Museum is several hours' drive from Route 66 in the somewhat remote community of Maricopa, south of Phoenix. I encourage you to visit. Find details at dwarfcarmuseum.com. If you're flying there, most convenient for pilots is to land and rent a car at either Chandler Municipal Airport, that's Charlie Hotel Delta, or Casa Grande Municipal Airport, Charlie Golf Zulu. Casa Grande is closer, but it's non-towered and super busy with training traffic. No matter how you get there, say hi to Ernie for me when you visit. I mentioned when opening this podcast the huge popularity of Route 66, both experientially and in popular culture, and thus in the hearts and minds of those like ourselves connected with it. Well, I'd like to close with a somewhat emotional non-flying experience that brought that popularity home to my wife Jean and me. The two of us had just arrived in Osaka, Japan, a dozen years ago, and headed to the hotel's classy bar that evening to celebrate our upcoming vacation. There, a talented American jazz and blues man was entertaining patrons on the piano. Being the only other Westerners in the bar, Gene and I walked over and introduced ourselves during his break. He was from Cleveland, as I remember, and we had a nice chat about our hometowns and how the popularity of blues and jazz music had brought him to Japan. The break ended and he returned to the piano. As Gene and I sat down to finish our drinks, the gentleman opened his new set. Without verbal introduction, he launched into singing and playing Bobby Troupe's classic song, "Get Your Kicks," on Route 66. Gene and I were all smiles, grooving on it. And judging by the lack of reaction, the surrounding Japanese patrons probably wondered what we were about. It felt very private and powerful, that particular song directed to us alone among the crowd. And it brought lumps to our throats. But the best was yet to come. The pianist delivered us a very personal Route 66 kick by singing the Arizona verse twice. Sounds silly, perhaps, but we'll never forget it. Find links and photos for this episode on my website, gregbrownflyingcarpet.com, and look forward to more Route 66 stories in the future. Search Route 66 on the website to find relevant episodes. Thanks for riding along on today's Flying Carpet adventure. Find photos from most episodes at gregbrownflyingcarpet.com. While there, Order one of the few remaining autographed copies of my aviation adventure book, Flying Carpet, The Soul of an Airplane, for which I was named Barnes & Noble Arizona Author of the Month. You'll also find my other aviation books there, and my Views from the Flying Carpet aerial photography available in fine art metal prints. Please support this podcast by sharing your favorite episodes on social media, posting reviews on your favorite podcast directories, and donating via gregbrownflyingcarpet.com. I welcome your feedback via my website, via my Flying Carpet Podcast Facebook group. Finally, follow my social media sites by searching Greg Brown Flying Carpet, and consider joining my Student Pilot Pep Talk Facebook group. Thanks, Carter Olson, for the tagline. Music by Hannes Brown. See you next time.